Hi everyone, my name is Sandy Mackey and I'm the Housing Research and Policy Lead at Qualitative Development Services. Thanks very much for joining me to talk about the Strathcona Regional District Housing Needs Report and some of our preliminary findings for Electoral Area D. I'd first like to acknowledge with respect the many nations and traditional territories within which this study is taking place, including the Hadasat First Nation, Hamalko First Nation, Cayuga Checklaseth First Nation, Clahus First Nation, Comox First Nation, Mawachat Muchalat First Nation, the Nuchalat Tribes, Clawitsis First Nation, Wewake, and Wewaikum First Nations. Briefly in this presentation, we'll go quickly over the project and the different goals and objectives of the study. We'll talk a bit about our preliminary findings, go over some of our next steps, and outline how you can continue to contribute to this project. Quickly, Macola Development Services, my company, is a nonprofit professional consulting firm with approximately 20 staff, including planners, development managers, and dedicated experts in Indigenous relations and communications. We've got over 30 years of experience in both the market and non-market housing sectors, and we've been conducting rural housing needs assessments across the province over the past 3 years. The goals of this project are first and foremost to meet new provincial requirements. In 2019, the provincial government put ahead new legislation that requires all local governments, including electoral areas, conduct a housing needs report every 5 years. Within that are a number of different requirements in terms of qualitative and quantitative data, and it's our goal to develop a regional housing needs report for each of the electoral areas of the SRD that meets those requirements and includes significant and community engagement. At the end of the project, we'll be making some high-level recommendations and sharing the results with the board and the public. It's important to note that though this project is for the SRD, it is only for the rural areas or the electoral areas of the regional district. Campbell River, Gold River, Sayward, Tassis, Sabalos, and the Treaty Nation of Cayuga Checklaseth is not included. What you can expect to see in the report is some information on what is happening. Local and regional demography, households, incomes, some information about your economy and housing affordability. You can also expect to see who it's happening to. So things like engagement data. We'll also be conducting an affordability analysis and giving you information on which income and population groups are struggling the most to meet their housing needs. What's not in this report is that next step, where new housing should go or the form or density it should take. It'll be up to the SRD and electoral areas to decide how to act on the information included in the report to best support their communities. Often that's through OCP or zoning bylaw updates, partnership development, and different community education. The study area of the project is, again, the entire regional district of Strathcona, the rural areas, and I've highlighted their electoral area D because that's what we'll be focusing on today. Unless otherwise specified, all of the information you're about to see comes from census data that's specific to area D or from community members who are residents of electoral area D. So starting briefly with population and household numbers, you can see that there's been some marginal growth in electoral area D over the past 10 years. In 2016, there were about 4,500 people, and in 2031, we're projecting about 4,800 people, so growth of about 250 residents. We've also seen that households have grown about accordingly, about 1,800 households in 2016, up to about 2,100 households in 2031. So that means that the growth in households is actually slightly outpacing the growth in population. There were about 2.4 people per home in 2016, and that's gone down to about 2.2 people per home in 2031. That's typical as populations age and as family dynamics change. We're finding that more and more you need more homes to house less people. And that actually has a lot to do with what you're seeing on this slide. What you're seeing here is 3 different census periods, or 2 different census periods and 1 projected census period, and the different breakdowns of age demographies in each of those 3 years. And the most important thing to look at is the way that green sector of the circles is growing. The green sector represents residents over the age of 64, so 65 plus. And in 2006, there were only about 21% of the population over the age of 64, and we're projecting that by 2026, that number will be closer to 30%. So the senior age cohorts are definitely growing and growing faster than any other category of age group. And that's important because folks in those senior age cohorts tend to have pretty specific housing needs. Often they are less able to manage larger properties and maintain older homes. They're also often more in need of supportive elements like in-home nursing care, in-home meal care, and sometimes even fully supported housing. So an older and aging population has a lot of ramifications for the type of housing stock that needs to be available within your community. Area D is, however, one of the younger parts of the regional district. Many of the other areas of the SRD are well over 35% over the age of 65. So though you are a bit younger, it's still something to be considering as you're making housing policy moving forward. Moving on from age demographics to look at some of the costs of renting and owning across the SRD, starting with renting. While we don't have information for the electoral areas, we do have rental information for rental units in Campbell River, and it's a fairly good approximation of the type of trends we're seeing across the entire regional district. In general, since 2011, after adjusting for inflation, rental costs are up about 72% over the past 10 years, and the most aggressive increases in cost have come in units that are more than 3 bedrooms, so family units. They're up 111% over the past 10 years, more than doubling in cost. A typical 3-bedroom rental unit now rents for over $2,000 in Campbell River. Which makes it challenging for folks, especially folks with children, to find appropriate rental accommodations. Unfortunately, the data doesn't tell us anything about the condition of the unit or type of unit. Often poor condition units tend to be less expensive, and it doesn't differentiate between an apartment building or a full home. We do have better data when it comes to looking at the ownership market. In electoral area D, we've seen that over the past 10 years after adjusting for inflation, housing has actually gotten significantly more expensive. Across your market, in total, unit costs are up 91% since 2011, which is a fairly significant increase. Single detached homes are up about 82%, and the average single detached home was almost $600,000 in 2020, which is really expensive. You have most of your market made up of those single detached homes, with a few semi-detached and manufactured or mobile homes thrown in. What's perhaps more useful, rather than looking at just at the cost of ownership, is actually comparing the ability of the median income to purchase with the actual cost of what a median home would be. So for this, we make some basic mortgage assumptions about the purchasing power of the median income, and we've mapped it against the cost of the median home over the past 10 years and adjusted both numbers for inflation. So as you can see, the green line, which represents the ability or the purchasing power of that median income, has remained relatively stable, peaking at about $400,000 in 2020. The cost of the median home, however, though it remained relatively stable and closely aligned with the purchasing power of the median income till about 2016, has really split dramatically in the intervening 5 years. Now the cost of the median home far exceeds the ability of the median income to purchase it, and that gap is expected to get larger and larger as housing challenges sort of reverberate out from the Lower Mainland and the CRD areas. This has driven, this along with the cost of renting, has driven a stat called core housing need. Core housing need looks at 3 specific indicators: affordability, suitability, and adequacy. So affordability means, does your home cost less than 30% of your income? Suitability means, does it have enough bedrooms for the number of people in your family or in your household? And condition or adequacy is your home in poor condition or not? And across the regional district, renters have much higher rates of core housing need than owners do. About 23% of renters in electoral area D are in core housing need, and about 40% of renters across the regional district are in core housing need. So you can see from these 2 graphs that electoral area D has actually lower rates of core housing need than the rest of the rural areas of the Strathcona Regional District, and that's a great thing. It means that there is still time to address some of the challenges that may potentially get worse in your communities, and I think that it's great to continue to monitor these statistics to make sure that they're not jumping over the course of multiple census periods when we do have that information. But it's still important to note that 1/4 almost of all the renters in electoral area D are in either an unaffordable, unsuitable, or inadequate housing situation. What's also instructive is looking at the rates of core housing need across different family groups. On the left there, you can see that couples with children and couples without children tend to have fairly low rates of core housing need, and we've mapped them against all 3 indicators there. Lone parents and singles or roommates tend to have some of the higher rates of core housing need in your communities. Almost 42% of lone parents are in an unaffordable housing situation. That's really common to see them being in a more challenging financial position because they have typically only one income and are trying to find housing that's suitable for both them and their children with limited funds. Singles or roommates tend to be the oldest and youngest people in our communities, about 35% of them in core housing need. It's typically because they're the people who are with lower earning potential in their lives. They're the youngest people just starting out in their careers, or they're older members of our communities who are retired and living alone. In addition to all of this data, we've got some really great qualitative responses to a community survey that we're doing. As of the recording of this video, 412 responses have been received to the survey, 23% of which come from electoral area D. And looking at some general statistics from across the SRD, about 1/4 of respondents have indicated that their current housing does not meet their needs. And across the next 5 years, 60% are worried about the cost of utilities, 50% are worried about the ability to maintain and repair their home, and a little under 40% worried about their physical ability to maintain their home, which to me indicates some pretty specific correlation with the aging cohorts of residents of the SRD. And we've also pulled a couple of community quotes from here. The first one I'll read to you. I am fortunate to have a home that I subsidize with a small rental unit, but I do know of many folks who are living in housing they can't afford or struggling to find someone to house them. And then another one here, affordability is becoming a huge issue. I have no idea based on current wages for most jobs, or even wages for jobs that require higher education, how it can be expected that people will be able to afford even modest living arrangements. And then many people in electoral area D mentioned the cost of utilities. This person is saying that utilities keeps going up. Our water bill in area D also keeps going up, making it very unaffordable. And this person concerned about rising property taxes that don't reflect the actual value of home based on the condition of the property. So that's kind of it for today. Still to come in this project are some more engagement analysis. We'll be synthesizing the draft report and reviewing it with staff before presenting to the SRD board. And there is still an opportunity for you to provide your feedback by visiting the SRD project website, located on the SRD website, srd.ca. And for more information, you can always get in touch with myself. My email and phone number are there, or with Meredith Starkey, who is the manager for planning and parks and the project lead for the SRD. And right before we go, I will just mention that there is a concurrent housing research project that's being hosted by the Coalition to End Homelessness for Campbell River and District, as well as the Urban Indigenous Housing and Wellness Coalition. While our study looks a lot at data and looking at indicators that we can use to compare across jurisdictions, this study is really focused on gathering stories of people who are facing housing insecurity in and around Campbell River and across the SRD. So if you live in the SRD and feel that your home is not suitable or affordable, or are finding it difficult to secure housing or services in your community, I would highly encourage you to fill it out. It's going to help them sort of redirect resources within the service provider community across the SRD, and should go a long way towards hopefully helping people address housing insecurity. You can complete that survey at the link included on your screen, or for more information, visit crhousing.net. And that's it. Thanks so much for your time today, and thanks for your interest in housing across the Strathcona Regional District. Again, please do not hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions at all, and my email is on the screen. Thanks.